Okay.
So you don't want me to use my. We love the, my director voice is even bigger.
I taught 7th grade. I can reach across the playing field.
Okay, so far we've been talking about guitars, we've been talking about
Right.
pianos, we've been talking about songs. What about the more ambitious music? The
Orchestral.
the
Symphonic.
music of the courts. Orchestras and choirs of the time were typically small because having paid musicians on staff was a real example of conspicuous consumption.
And that meant like 20
Less than that.
musicians.
Less-
15,
The
10.
reason, you look at the original, and by the way, in the music world, when they say autograph, they're talking about the actual handwritten manuscript of the piece. You look at the original autographs of a lot of music from that time, and they're scored for 5, 6, 8
musicians.
instrumentalists
Instruments.
and 4 singers. I could not. My library is still in boxes. My life is still in boxes
In your house.
in our new house. I couldn't find the box to have my. I think this is in my. I have a copy of the full score to the Messiah, and I think it's in there that I read that I believe the very first performance of the Messiah was like 30 performers. Period.
And the most of it was the choir.
No, it's like 14 to 16 instrumentalists and 8 to 12 singers. The very first performance of Messiah
You'd
was
need
very
at least
small.
8 or 8 parts.
The Bach cantatas 100 years later, Messiah 100 years later. The ensembles were small, with the exception of some grand religious what's the word I'm looking at, spectacles and liturgy, stuff like that.
Like the Passion Play, kind of things.
The courts, and even in the cathedrals, the performing groups were normally relatively small. You typically didn't have 500 voice choirs and 300, 150 musician orchestra on a weekly basis. And the Kapellmeisters that wrote music for the churches, they had to. The reason there's so many Bach cantatas still in existence, they 40 some odd CDs of Bach cantatas, is because he had to write a new one every stinking week. So
Because to keep the ratings up.
when you're writing that many that quickly, you tend to write them relatively simply, not complex.
Similar.
Because you can't, number one, you don't have a lot of rehearsal time, and number two, you don't have the time to write a symphonic work.
You have to have something next week.
Yeah, you gotta have something done in 4 days because you're going to be rehearsing it on Friday and performing it on Sunday. So I mean that's kind of the textures were thin. They were florid. They would move a lot, but the textures were relatively thin, and the sound, comparatively speaking to later on, was relatively thin. So put yourself in the mind of that guy. He's got to write a new cantata every week. He's got to write new incidental music for the count or the duke or the abbot's next
Birthday.
party or what celebration, to be played as music in the background while everybody mingles around drinking wine and talking.
Because it can't be the old one.
Put yourself in the mind of that guy. This is the kind of music. Well, I jumped ahead in my notes. Sorry. First of all, this piece is by Giovanni Gabrieli, and this predates our period of time by about 50 years. Oops. Hit the button. We don't have anything to teach these guys about brass playing.
No. Or technique even.
absolutely gorgeous music.
Especially if you have the hall that just reverberates with it.
But we can teach them something about how to write for brass.
Yes.
That is not simple harmony.
No.
Somehow I can see Gustavus Adolphus's eyes lighting up.
Yes, I want that. I want.
Oh, I've got a story in mind for this.
Oh, I'll bet.
Common man, I'm not a common man.
I don't know. Maybe for Christina's wedding.
I wouldn't wait that long, and besides which, he's got to get remarried himself.
That thing does not resolve. That thing ends on open dissonance. And the downtime ear would just cringe from that.
My ear cringes.
I don't know.
Okay, now, talking about orchestras, choirs, etc., this is music from the time. That's your elevator music.
It's polyphony. It's each line follows the other lines,
There's basically 4 lines going there.
and they're all similar enough that they echo each other.
That was by Monteverdi. He died in 1643. That was by Bieber.
Bieber.
It's actually a little bit after our time because he was born in 1644. But that's relatively close in terms of style and technique. So that's the kind of music the composer is writing for the duke, for the count, for the abbot, for the bishop. That's the kind of music he's writing. What's he going to think when he hears this?
He's gonna say too much cymbal. Yeah, the Germans will like it. It keeps them awake at the
The
end.
March of the College of Cardinals.
Okay. Cymbals, new. They have no cymbals. Massive percussion, new. What percussion they're used to is very small, very light drums.
Snare
They have no
drum kind of-
timpani. They have no bass drum. They have tenor drums. They might have one of those.
The only
laying around.
big drum that I know of is the Irish lambic,
Yeah.
and they don't.
Though that's a country drum too.
That
It's
never
not,
made it.
It's low music. It's not high
Yeah,
music.
they never made it out of
So I mean,
out of Ireland.
percussion is totally new to these guys. But the voicing of, even without the percussion, the voicing of that work, the thickness of the texture from top to bottom, all of the instruments playing, that would be new to them.
And so many more instruments
Yeah.
too.
How about this one?
Well, every recorder player I know would look at that and say, "I don't know how he did that." because you can't finger notes like that on a recorder. Yeah, he is. He's leaning into it. And he hands it off. That's brass they may not know how to do.
Okay. Again, Gershwin. Again, American in Paris. Or Rhapsody. Stop that. Rhapsody no, American in Paris. No, Rhapsody in Blue.
Rhapsody in Blue.
I keep confusing the titles. The clarinet glissando at the beginning, where he just takes a note and slides it. You can't do that on any downtime instrument. He just slides that note for an entire octave. And then the trumpet mute,
Yeah.
right before I closed, totally new sound,
Yeah,
totally new
he
technique.
took the clarinet up and handed it to the trumpet. That was so nice.
So that there's a French word that's spelled Timbre. It's
Timbre.
pronounced timbre. And it means the very nature and quality of the sound. That clarinet glissando, that trumpet mute, those are timbres that they have never heard. They have no idea what they're like, and they have no idea how to produce them. And some of the guys are going to go, I want that.
Now, I got a question for you, David.
Yeah.
It's canon that in Magdeburg, the upper crust gets together for video parties, watching musical comedy and listening war movies and listening to. They're going to hear this stuff in the scores of all of those videos. What's that going to do to the difference between the way that the Magdeburg upper crust appreciates music and the way that everybody else isn't getting the chance to do that?
I think there's going to be, there's always been a disconnect between the aficionados of the street music and the aficionados of the court music.
Right.
That's still
There
true
still
today.
is. It still is.
Highbrow, lowbrow.
Yeah, highbrow, lowbrow. I think it's just going to make that gap a little more evident.
Well, some of this music is going to be playing on Voice of America. There's some people that are going to hear it somewhere.
I jumped the gun. This was the next piece.
You mean Disney? Yeah. That's why I say it's Disney. You know, it's
Night on Bald Mountain.
Night on Bald Mountain.
Again, timbre and texture. Totally different use of the instruments than they're used to.
I don't think they've heard that on the
producing
violin.
a totally different sound. There are going to be guys going, ooh, devil music, get away from me. There's going to be guys going,
How did you do
how
that?
did you do that? I
Well,
want
heck,
that.
there's people looking at rock music and going, devil music now.
Yeah.
Not just rock. There's
or-
some
Okay.
there's some concert
How
music.
about this?